Welcome. This is our very first episode with Next Up with IE. I'm your host, Daniel Roberts. Shout out to my boy in the back and doing the camera work, Dave. Today we have our first guest, just a kid from Tustin, California, a senior in industrial engineering, Conor McCarthy. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. My mom's going to appreciate the Tustin, California.
Hey, I want to make sure I give some love to him. So one of the first thing I want to ask you, just because I want to get to know you a little bit, if you had to name a movie that described your personality, what movie would it be and why?
That's a tough one. I've been trying to think as much as I can about movies, and I go through the sports movies and trying to think of Remember the Titans or Miracle on Ice. Like, which one could I possibly be the most like? But honestly, I kind of try to say I'm a blend of them, take the goods and the bads, and try to be the best leader I can be. So I definitely, in terms of movies that make me think like, oh, I should be a leader like that. I looked at Denzel Washington and Remember the Titans. I thought he was a great, and then obviously the coach in Miracle on Ice I thought was also a very good one. I think trying to blend their leadership styles, be compassionate, but also encourage the standards that are needed to succeed in a career is kind of where I take that balance. But yeah, that's probably the closest I can get to off the fly.
No, it's okay, man. No, leadership is very important. Mine would be Never Back Down. So,
that's a good one.
Reason for that, it's a very cheesy old martial arts movie, like early 2000s. But the one thing I liked about the movie is the kid went through so much heartache. He went through so much trauma, losing his dad, and then he had other situations that happened in the movie that just affected him. But he kept moving forward. He kept moving forward. Now, he would make a mistake every now and then, but he kept moving forward. And then when it's time to get to that final fight where he's about to fight the boss or the main villain, which he wasn't really a villain, it was just somebody that had an ego trip, he defeated the guy. And the one thing in the movie that always resonated with me because we're in this world, in our life and everything that goes on, the one that does the sensei goes, whatever happens, control the outcome. And it's a crazy thing because as we're going through our careers, our life, we worry about so many different things, and the only thing we could do is control how we react to things. So that's pretty much kind of controlling the outcome.
Yeah, no, your attitude that you have when you go through your different challenges and adversity, and even just your daily life, really does kind of predict your outcome, right? Predict the results, because you can sit there and you can say, I'll take it on the cheek and let's figure out a solution going forward. You can kind of sit there and wallow, and really, the balance between those two is what's going to determine it. Definitely, in my time here at Purdue, it's very similar. It's very much like, what issue comes up, how do I deal with it, right? Whether it be something that's nonchalant as like, oh, I can't figure out this class, I'm really starting to struggle, how do I deal with that? Or something larger is like, I'm at an internship and, the work I'm doing is not satisfying, I want to find something, more. So I start going around and asking people for, if I can shadow them, so I can learn from them, that kind of stuff. So yeah, your attitude is a huge component of everything you do.
Yeah, and you're going to hope for the best. Like you either sit around, mope around, or you can look for solutions and control your reaction. And I think if you can control your reaction, then you can control the outcome for your future. You talked a little bit about internship and just working with different people and everything. And the one thing, before we get into it, I want to learn a little bit more about you, the kid from Tustin, California.
Tustin, California.
To be exact.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and some of your goals.
Yeah, so ironically enough, I was born in Rhode Island, so on the opposite side of the coast, right? So I ended up wiggling around. I moved to Iowa, then Kentucky, and then Illinois, and then I moved to California full time, or split time between Illinois and California, but California became my home. Tustin, California, down nice, beautiful, sunny SoCal where weather's always perfect, started applying to colleges, came here to Purdue because, one, it's a huge aerospace school, and, I've always loved planes and spaceships and all that jazz, and so I was like, come here, and, I wanted to apply myself in engineering as best I could, and so now I'm here being a senior. But yeah, took that to my internships, that kind of attitude, and so I knew I wanted to do aerospace, so first started out as a manufacturing engineering intern over at a company called Eaton in their aerospace division, doing fluid and electrical distribution stuff. So a lot of that was implementing a like a cobot robot system into their manufacturing line, kind of a CapEx project almost. And then most recently, I just wrapped up my internship with Boeing at NASA's facility in New Orleans, doing SLS, so Artemis 1, or Artemis 2 and 3 technically, but the Artemis program as a whole. Over there, I was originally a production engineering, operations engineering, but I kind of was like, and as I talked about, wasn't, clicking where I didn't have that much workload. I was kind of, I don't want to sit on Twitter or X nowadays, right?
X.
X. I didn't want to sit on X all day. That sounds awful. But, so I started looking around, started shadowing, trying to find roles, and I ended up in the structural analysis team, doing a lot of structural analysis work there, and I really enjoyed it and took that on full, as my new internship. They kind of adopted me as one of their own, as first ever intern in their group, and so finished up there, and now I'm coming back to finish my last semester here on campus, and here to share what I've learned, as much as I can.
Wow, that is awesome, man. You have a lot of experience. Artemis 1, Artemis 2, Artemis 3, Eaton, like, can I work for you? let me work for you. Let me build up my resume, and then I'll come work for you. That is awesome. That, like, just the experience you're having to be able to give it back to your peers, and the knowledge you'll have, depending on what job you have, will benefit you long term. So let's talk a little bit about the Artemis project. I want to learn more. So can you give a little bit more detail about what you did in the Artemis project?
Yeah, of course. So let's give a little bit of background on Artemis as a whole. So Artemis program is this generation's version of the shuttle program. It is our, next generation heavy lift rocket to send man and woman back to the moon and then send us to Mars, right? That is the end goal of it, right? We're going to do it incrementally, but that's the overall goal. So in doing so, there's a lot of great companies that work on it, but Boeing is one of the large ones that makes up the, we call it the SLS, Space Launch System, which is the core stage of that rocket. So if you ever see pictures, it's the orange, if you want to think about the orange, is that orange part of the rocket, which a lot of people think it's paint. It's actually not. It's called TPS, it's thermal protection. It's actually a foam that we spray on, and it reacts with the sun, and that gives it that burnt orange color that you see on the launch pad when it launches. So Boeing makes that, and their facility to do so is a NASA facility down in New Orleans called the Michoud Assembly Facility. And basically what it is all the parts for the rocket come in, all the panels, all the, everything kind of comes in. It gets welded together, bolted together, assembled all together into, its final rocket. Then it gets put onto a barge, and then it goes from New Orleans all the way to Kennedy out in Florida. So that is what Artemis is in its end phase, getting us back to the moon, back to Mars, and what Boeing does specifically is that central core stage element. And so Artemis 1 launched successfully, I think, in last October, November, and we're finishing up Artemis 2 now. And it was a lot of fun because the work I was doing was directly impacting Artemis 2, and then I was doing work that was directly impacting Artemis 3 and Artemis 4 down the line, which was a really cool idea because, you're doing your work and you kind of go like, it's just work, right? I'm doing it, right? And then every once in a while, they would bring in either astronauts or they'd bring in launch commanders, and they would kind of talk about, what you're doing directly impacts them and what it means to them,
yes.
Right? And so, you kind of felt a little bit inspired almost, where you're like, what I'm doing matters, right? Yeah. Like what I'm doing here does have an impact, right? And an impact I can see, right? Because I loved working at Eaton, but there was a lot of components, like it was just machine components that would go into engine systems, and it's not a direct, like you see the result of your impact, right? You're just, you're helping out your product line, you're making it more efficient, doing what I do, right? Yeah. But at Boeing, you could sit there and visualize, like when you saw them play like the launch and have some some music behind it, you kind of go like, wow, like what I'm doing is going to have an impact, a lasting one at that. Now keep in mind, I was only an intern, right? I'm not the geniuses up top, but you sat there and tell yourself, this matters, like what I'm doing matters. And so that's one of the really cool aspects of this recent internship that I've never really felt anywhere else, was like, you kind of felt like, oh, what I'm doing matters. But yeah, so at my time there, I was originally under the production leaders. So I was going to be doing more like kind of like lean and continuous improvement stuff for the next gen, because there's a lot of Artemises that have been scheduled to be made, right? So a lot of continuous improvement, still in its very early stage of production. But there wasn't really a lot of work right there. It was kind of hampered by a lot of things. So instead of just kind of sitting there collecting a paycheck, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go find something. So I started hopping around, right? I went over to the manufacturing team, see if they have anything. I went over to the industrial team, see if they had anything, and then I ended up over in stress analysis, and they were like, yeah, we have work for you to do. Do you want to learn? And so it's not traditionally an IE, but to me, nothing is traditionally IE because I've always had the thought process like I can do anything. Like if I put my mind to it, I can always do it. So I took a crash course basically in like 2 weeks time about all the nominal certification loads for the rocket, started learning like Shigley's methodology and kind of just going down and started working myself up to build, to gain confidence in myself, but also for the team to build confidence in me that like when they can start giving me actual like, analysis to do, that what I'd produce is what they would want, right? So a lot of that, and so I ended up really enjoying it. Like I had an incredible mentor there. But yeah, so I mean, I had a great time there and I learned a lot. And so specifically what I did was whenever you would have like, defects or deformities, right, you need to make sure it's still good to go, right? Like, whether it be, hey, we had to oversize a hole for a larger bolt, right? How is that going to affect the loads in the area? Are we still going to have a positive margin of safety? So a lot of what I did was that kind of aspect specifically. And it was not just for oversizing bolts, but if you want to increase the shim thickness, right? Because you have some like bending issue, or hey, there's a gouge on this base plate, right? And we lost some material. Is structurally still good to go, right? And so looking at making sure everything's safe and good to go, right? Taking a look at the stress analysis, and going forward.
Man, that is a lot of information. But no, that is awesome. No, I'm happy that you had an opportunity to experience all that, to take that initiative. That's one of the things about being Purdue IE is like you take initiative, make things better, go out your way to be the next up. That's the best thing, to be next up. So you talked a little bit about the processes, everything you had to learn, a 2-week crash course. What are some things that you took away from the internship that you think Purdue IEs or any IE would want to hear?
Yeah, of course. I think there's 2 things I can think off the top of my head. First one being really quick and simple is Purdue has a lot of respect where it goes. Like the name Purdue and a Purdue engineering degree holds a lot of respect. When I came down to New Orleans, I was expecting everyone to go like, what's Purdue? Like, because it's not a huge state school, so it's not obviously identifiable, but a lot of people went, oh, you're from Purdue, like, that's good, like, you're smart. And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that, but, and then the second thing is, and we kind of mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast, but your attitude is everything, right? I could have sat there and just done nothing, right? Just kind of let time pass by, and I wouldn't have, matured as an engineer or as a person, right? I would have just kind of accepted what it is. And to me, I'm there to learn, right? An internship at the end of the day is for you to learn and gain experience, right? Experience your resume, but also experience of what do I like, what do I dislike, what's interesting, what's not interesting, right? And so to me, that attitude of taking kind of the step of like, yeah, I'm gonna go bother somebody, right? Not like, out of pocket, but like just walking up and being like, hey, I'm Connor, I'm an intern over in production. I was wondering if I could shadow you, maybe follow some stuff you do and see if I could help you out on any of your tasks, right? Because if you come in from that aspect, like that way of like, hey, I'm here to contribute, I'm here to learn, right? Not like I'm here to bother you, right? If you come in with like hey, I want to contribute, I want to learn from you, right? People are a lot more receptive, right? And so, as you go around, I would talk to different teams of people, I was able to make a lot of connections as well, right? By the end of the summer, I knew almost everybody in the industrial engineering group down there. I knew almost everybody in the production group. I knew everyone in the stress group. I knew a lot of the tooling engineering group, right? Just because you went over there and you said, hey, I'm this person, can I contribute, right? Can I be that person, right? And to me, that's something that I think a lot of interns can gain from, right? Because I even saw, even at Boeing, there were some interns who were in a similar situation as me where they didn't take that step, they just kind of sat there. And by the end of the summer, they were like, I didn't do anything. Like, I was there, I can put that down on the resume that I was there, but they didn't have that experience of learning, not just learning new things, but learning how to talk to new people, learning how to communicate, and even network at some extent, right? Because that's kind of what it is, right? And that's something I really want to stress to, because I'm mentoring some sophomores in the seminar class, and I want to make sure I impose on that. It's like, this is what you make of it. So go out there and just be you, right? Yeah. Go out there, show off your personality, right? Show off your drive to contribute, right? Because especially in large team projects like Artemis, it's all about team play, right? Can you contribute to the team? Do you want to work with the team, right? Because there's, way too much going on with way too many groups for you to just kind of sit there and, hide, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of one thing that I really took away was like, I made this internship to what it is because I said, I want to go do something. I want to go learn something new. Because I didn't know like stress analysis really at all, right? I knew it was a thing. I knew it was out there. But until I went up there and went, hey, my name's Connor. Can I contribute? I would never really understood it.
No, you gave an interesting perspective of like taking initiative and not just sitting there and letting things happen. Because one thing I learned from my growth as a professional is like you either can wait for things to happen or you can take the initiative, move forward. I like to use this term: if a door doesn't open up for me, I'll build my own door. Like I'll build my own door.
No,
if I
like
have to.
That's a good one.
Because at the end of the day, it's like we're in a society where things are not given to you. There's so much opportunity to grow. There's so much opportunity to advance. So why not just take it? Mm-hmm. Take the opportunity instead of sitting around. Because, like you said, like what you make of the internship is what you're going to get out of it. Mm-hmm. So if you're just sitting down, and nothing against those interns, I'm pretty sure they probably had the ambition and drive to do very well, but they didn't have that Mamba mentality, that dog mentality. California, I had to make sure I put the Cali in there.
Oh yeah.
That mentality of just like, you know what, I'm going to do what's best. I'm going to make this internship what it is. And so when I leave, I could be able to tell my story. Because at the end of the day, when you do your interviews, when you're meeting with people and you have your stories like this, you could give a story. You could be able to be like, hey, this is what I went through, and this is how you could be successful.
Oh yeah, and in doing so, there's so many, because it's kind of shameless. Like, hey, I need to do something. Like, someone give me some like opportunity, right? So you're walking up. Some people are gonna say, like, I would, but I can't. I'm sorry. Or some people just go like, I don't got time for you. Go away. And just walking up and just going like, hey, and they'd be like, oh, okay, man, I'm out. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, okay, hey, I got you. But no, I mean, it's really is what you make of it. But like, it's also kind of like in doing so, you kind of learn more about the entirety of what you're trying to do, right? Mm-hmm. Why am I truly there, right? If I'm only there because I want to do one thing, then you're going to want to keep hammering that one thing, right? If I'm there to truly explore, you're going to go out and truly explore, right? And that's one of the other interns there, a really good friend of mine, Kyle. He loves, kind of what he was doing in terms of the tooling database. Like he was making a database, and that's what he was doing. Like what he was doing, he was 100% committed to that, and that was, boom, his focus, right? Mm-hmm. Some of the interns like myself, we were kind of exploring. Like we don't know what we want, and also when I say exploring, it could be the job specifically, the field you're in, or even the location. Because like I loved aerospace. I loved working on NASA projects, but that heat in New Orleans, oh man, that heat in New Orleans was killing me. I tell you, man, by the time you walk to your car, you're sweating bullets. So it's stuff like that. Even the small things like, hey, I love the job, but the location wasn't for me, right? And so, man, but that heat, no joke. That heat's no joke.
Speaking of New Orleans, shout out to Kyle. Kyle, if you're seeing this, man, shout out to you, my buddy. Coming from California, so Tustin, California to New Orleans, what was the lifestyle, the experience, like just from living down there? Because I lived in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Shout out to Vicksburg. But and I used to work at an institution, a historical black college called Alcorn University. Hopefully I'm saying it right. Hopefully they'll hunt me down for not saying it right. But I was right there by Louisiana, so I was like where I lived, that was like 15 minutes from Louisiana, so I know about the heat and everything. But what was your experience like coming from Cali?
Well, so I drove from California to New Orleans, so I took that I-10 from start to finish. So that drive was on its own. But in terms of difference, I mean, like, so keep in mind when I first did my interview or my final rounds of interviews, they asked like, oh, like, are you used to like the heat? Like, it's gonna get you? And I'm like, I go to Purdue in Indiana. It gets hot out here. Like it has been for last week, right? Yeah. Like it's all right. I can deal with it. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like came with that little like swagger, like yeah, I'm fine. Oh man, when I got there though, it's like it's the heat and it also just sticks to you. It's the dew point's so high, the humidity's so high. Like my favorite one was it was 95, 96 degrees, started raining, and it literally was steaming back up. As you were walking to your car, you could feel it steam back up, and it was one like you're just like, am I in a sauna but outside? Like, what is going on? But in terms of, I will say this. I was surprised because New Orleans has an absolutely incredible, like, food scene. I loved it. I thought, and one of the most like challenging things for me was, I'm not a huge seafood guy to begin with, right? Then you go to New Orleans and there's so much good seafood you can get there, and it was all like really affordable too. That's the other thing, is like the price points were highly different. When I came to New Orleans, I was like, man, I'm eating good on a budget too.
Did you have some of the what is it called? Not shrimp, but
crawfish.
Crawfish.
So crawfish. What I was told, the season ends like towards the end of May, early June, and I just got in. With it. The other one I tried was gator for the first time.
How was that?
Everyone's like, oh, it tastes like chicken, and the worst part is I heard it beforehand, and I ate it. I'm like, this does taste like chicken. To the point where you're like,
Yes.
am I eating chicken? Right? And you're like,
I agree with that. I felt like I gained so much weight when I was down there, because I would go to like New Orleans from where I was at. It was like maybe 3-4 hour drive, but
Yeah.
it was worth it.
Oh yeah.
And like I gained at least 25 pounds because I would just go there and eat.
You could just eat constantly.
No wonder. No wonder everybody, like, every time someone goes down there, they're like, the first thing mentioned is food.
Oh, it's just,
The one thing I did like about being down there was the bugs, like water bugs.
man.
Like seeing water bugs, like, because they're pretty much roaches, but they're just
Yeah.
bigger roaches. And I was just like, how's this a thing?
man, so California, there's not really anything like that. We have ants, termites if you get really unlucky, like that kind of stuff. Some mosquitoes occasionally, but nothing like that. And that was a huge cold. Talk about like shock. That was a shock to me, because my first time. So this is awful, and nothing against New Orleans, but my first time dealing with a roach, I was sleeping and a roach came across my thing, and I heard like little noise, and I woke up in a freaking panic, right? And I'm throwing sheets, and then the roach drops out, and I go, oh no, and I grab my steel toe boot and I just start wailing on it, right? Trying to kill it, because it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
And so my landlord, because it's like 2-3 a.m. in the morning, my landlord like comes up, she was like, is everything okay? Like, so I'm like, oh my God, there's a roach. And she just goes, yeah, buddy, let me tell you, this is gonna be a long summer. And then, because she went to Tulane down in New Orleans, she's like, one time there was a roach that crawled up a guy's leg, and he started undressing himself right there, because those things are scary. Like, I don't know what about roaches makes you just so.
Yeah.
But it was, oh man, and it was funny because you'd walk, so I wasn't that far from Bourbon Canal and that streets, so we just walk back and you just see them on the ground, and you're like, ooh man, it's something different. That feeling
too.
you get. Oh, I didn't know they could fly. That was the worst part. There was one on my ceiling one time in my bathroom, and like I threw a Gatorade bottle to hit it and they started flying. Oh, I left the room. I was done. I was like, you know what? You can have the bathroom.
You could have it. And I remember, like, because like I said, I was in Vicksburg, so we're like right there by Louisiana, and I remember seeing those bugs, and like I remember my apartment was super clean. I like to have a clean apartment.
Oh yeah.
And they were still coming in. I'm like, what is this? Like, how's this a thing?
Yeah, after the concrete spray, everything got sprayed down. It was, I don't know how it, but no, I mean, I will say this though, like it was a fun summer. I had an absolute blast there, especially with, the interns I met and became friends with, because that was another thing I was like, because it was a much larger intern group. You can see from the picture, there's a much larger team than what I had in Beltsville for Eaton. I only had about 3 other interns. So like, people were going out a lot more as a group. Like, we were doing a lot more, and that was a really fun aspect that I appreciate, because I made some lifelong friends. You talk about how you're a Michigan fan. One of the kids I worked with, he was a quality engineer. He's an IE as well, and he's up in Michigan, right? He's a Michigan student, and I joke with him all the time because he's the Big Ten game, and she would sit there and be like, "Man, can you imagine going to a trash football school?" And I'm like, "Hey, watch your mouth, buddy. I remember you guys losing as well in the playoff." But it's just that kind of stuff where I've made great friends and I've made great connections, right? Where, we might cross paths, we might not, like, in the future, and you can always, have that friendship and that experiences. And also it's really cool because other than what IEs, you had IEs in quality, you had some IEs in doing continuous improvement stuff, right? To see not just IEs doing, traditional, what they describe as the industrial engineering department, but also see IEs in the quality engineering department, to see IEs in the continuous improvement areas and Kaizen and Lean. So seeing just kind of like, and also talking about their school, right? How their IEs compare to ours, right? Because some IEs are way more, technical focused, right? Like, we have a lot of technical classes here at Purdue. We have a good balance, I think. But then a lot of them are more like, kind of, business focused, right? Business operations focused, right? How do we, increase the efficiency on that side, right? And it was interesting to talk to the different IEs and the different schools to see kind of how it was. Because I really thought it was cool. So I ended up meeting IEs from Wisconsin, IEs from Michigan, Florida State, Tuskegee up in Alabama. Like I met a whole lot of people that were really cool, different experiences that I got to, just kind of share, compare and contrast, and then of course talk trash about sports because that's Big Ten runs deep.
It runs deep, but that's also that you had an opportunity to network with so many different people, and your peers is going to be what the future is. So, one of my mentors always would say, "Hey, don't worry about making friends or networking with people above you. Network with the people that's aside of you, because those are the people that's going to vouch for you in the future." So that's awesome that you're able to do that, because I'm pretty sure in the future when the opportunity comes, they're gonna remember you, be like, "Yo, remember when you killed that roach?" And they're like, "Hey, I got a job opening at this place," but they're gonna remember you just off of this experience they had together.
And that's one of the things I really love, because we would go to the gym together, or we had intern pickup basketball outside, by the way, to give you an idea of how dumb we were.
Oh my!
Because when we first got there, we were like, because they had some outdoor courts and they were NASA themed because it was NASA's facility, right?
Yeah.
Cool basketball court, really cool design, And we're like, yeah, let's just play some hoops right here, right? Not really thinking about the weather, and then you get out there and you're like, oh, this was dumb. This was so dumb of us. And like you finish up your couple games and you're just like sitting there, and then your car's like toasted as well. So you get to the car and then it hits you, and you're like, man, I'm dumb. Why did we sign up for this? But it's those kind of memories you're gonna sit there and be like, hey man, remember when you dropped like 21 points in that one game? And you're like, or do you remember? My favorite one was so NASA has their own little police department there, NASA Security Services. Every once in a while, one of the NASA cops would drive up alongside of us and go, "What are you guys doing? It is too hot for that. I swear to God, if I get a call about one of you guys passing out," and we're sitting there going like, "Man, everyone, including us, are thinking about it."
Yes, I can see you now, just like, "Oh no, he's on the ground. Somebody help him, help him!"
Because I can say, like, "Oh my God, what are the interns doing? They're gonna get themselves killed."
You'll be in the hospital, but like, well, at least I scored 30.
Exactly.
I scored 30.
Double goes hard.
Yes.
But no, it's those kind of experiences that like you really kind of take back, where you're like, this is awesome, right? And the friends you make, like I'm going to go up for the Purdue Michigan game and see my friend Anj, who was in quality, right? We're going to hang out that weekend. It's those kind of things where you're like, I learned a lot, but I also made a lot of friends. And that's kind of the experience as a whole, right? And that's what everyone should strive to do. And I think that's kind of what makes the internship as fun as well. Now keep in mind, like, it was an absolute privilege to work on a NASA project. Like that, I take it for granted at times where I'm like, this was an insanely great opportunity. And a very rare one at that, where when I came to Purdue, if you're like, hey, you're going to go work on rockets in like 3 years' time, I'm be like, okay, what are you on? I'm not on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of just what happens, right? You apply yourself here at Purdue, and you get yourself as much as you can networked. Like, I mean, Purdue has a vast, I mean, the deputy director for SLS at Boeing, he's a Purdue grad. And, the former site leader was also, she just moved to satellites, I believe, but the former site director was a Purdue grad as well. Mm-hmm. And so Purdue runs deep in the aerospace and defense companies, and really leveraging that, reaching out to people. As simple as just hey, my name's Connor. I'm a sophomore, junior, senior here at Purdue. I have a real huge interest in this. Do you mind if I just pick your brain about how you got to your current position, right? Just that, because you really got to lean on the student card, because people love to help other people, right? I've noticed that people are very helpful, and when you're a student, you can really lean on like, oh, I'm just a student. Like, you mind helping me? Because people always want to help somebody out, right? So I would definitely say lean on that, right? And especially when you're at your internship, right? You might think like, oh, I made it, right? I'm here. No, you got to keep going. Reach out to as many people as you can, because you don't know where anyone's going to go. Like my former boss at Eaton, he's now the value stream director, right? He's got promoted 2 or 3 rungs, and boom, he's there now. And I'm like sitting going like, it's a good thing I was on his good side, right? But it's you always got to sit there and you always got to tell yourself like, I'm here, but I want to make sure like I talk to as many people, because you're going to make friends. You're going to make people who aren't your friends, right? You're going to find out what works, right?
Mm-hmm. You kind of gave a lot of advice, a lot of information for people that's going to be watching this. So I want to kind of end off on what would be your legacy at Purdue IE, and what other advice that you haven't given already to our viewers that you think would benefit them long term, so whether it's first year students looking into coming to Purdue IE, or people that's looking to come to Purdue, or just anybody that's just want to know about Purdue IE? What advice or information you could give?
Oh man,
I know that's a long one.
That's a great one, because you said you have about legacy. I'm like, man, do I even have a legacy? And what I'm trying to impart as I leave is, and the reason I took up mentoring this last semester was I want to share what I learned, because I've had highs and I've had lows. I've had good conversations with people, and I've also had bad conversations with people, right? I've made mistakes as well. So I want to teach everyone, what I've learned and what I've made mistakes on, so they can kind of pick up and take and adapt it for their own. Because my blueprint, we can look back at how I got here, from a top down, but from a bottom up, it could be a completely different path, right? As we, navigate. So I just want to kind of give people the philosophy and the lessons that I kind of took into this stuff, right? Constantly trying to apply yourself and just put yourself in that situation, right? It may work out, it may not. And that's kind of what I want to mentor and teach people about. In terms of like a more physical legacy, I hope the work I did under Professor Wu, who's a brilliant professor, I think he's going to go very far. With the work I did under him, I'm hoping that team succeeds and we can see that, pay out and work out. In terms of overall lessons, it's what you make of it, right? Your attitude, like you can be brilliant, you can be smart, but if you have a terrible attitude, people aren't going to like you. And I think that's kind of like what I want to tell people is like, your attitude will define you, right? When it comes to job opportunities, internship opportunities, promotions, raises, all that stuff, your attitude is such a huge component of who you are, right? Because it speaks volumes, right? How you approach stuff speaks volumes about who you are. And then kind of going top down, if you are someone looking to come to Purdue, it's a fantabulous engineering. I mean, we're top 10 in almost everything. Like, it is a great engineering school. You're going to learn from the best. And the alumni network, as I talked about, like, the deputy director, we had people over at Eaton who were Purdue grads. Like, Purdue is everywhere, right? We are some of the best engineers that come out, right? We are in every field. So there's an alumni network that you can really lean on, get advice from, all that jazz, right? Really kind of see, just conversations, right? And then if you're a freshman wanting to come to IE, it's a really great opportunity. I obviously think it's the best of the options because I chose it, but there's a lot of great ones. But I loved IE because the idea of everything can be improved. Every process, everything can be improved, right? We can always make it a little bit better, a little bit more efficient, right? And to me, that type of creative problem solving is very unique to the IE field, right? And you can really apply it to everywhere, right? Because chemical engineers are going to focus more on chemical stuff, right? BMEs are going to focus more on med products, right? But IEs are everywhere. You can apply the philosophy everywhere, and that's to me why I think it's one of the most advantageous degrees you can get here. And then for the sophomores and juniors and seniors, enjoy your time, learn a lot, talk to professors, get involved with research. I loved my research. I learned a lot because with semiconductors coming to Purdue, shout out Purdue Semiconductors. With all that, I wanted to learn more about nano manufacturing, etching, that kind of stuff. And so Professor Wu is a brilliant material science engineer. He taught a lot about the material requirements in manufacturing. So to me, find what you love, and it's here. Purdue has everything. So just apply yourself, and then be yourself, and then go represent Purdue well, on the big stage.
And you've been amazing. I want to thank you for taking your time out to come sit and talk with me. You've been an amazing guest, and I hope for the best for you. I hope your future looks bright. It's amazing. Like, I see it. Like, you got the swagger. You got the swagger, man, of something. You're gonna do something. I
appreciate that.
So when you become big time, just don't forget about this guy right here.
Oh yeah,
because I might try to come get a job from you. But in all seriousness, man, I'm proud of you. I am happy for you. I wish you the best for your future, and thank you for being on our first episode.
No, thank you for having me.
No problem.
Thank you, sir.
So, thank you. You've been watching Next Up with IE, with Conor McCarthy, senior from Cali, Tuscan, Cali.
Yes, sir.
Have a good one. Thank you.